Hey everybody, just wanted to make this quick video because I see a lot of people talking about Thorchain, obviously with the upcoming TCY launch. We had Alux on the podcast yesterday, and the recording will get posted probably around the same time this video goes up. So you can check my profile for the recording of that episode where we talk about TCY and all the updates coming with it and the expected launch date and what's going to happen on the launch day. And obviously Alux is spearheading all of that. So it was a plethora of information in that episode. But I see a lot of people talking about the RUNE price, and RUNE is performing actually really well the last couple days. So we're obviously kind of coming off of a bottom, where ThorFi imploded back in February, and then since then we've just been kind of dealing with the fallout of that. But really, RUNE tanked to like $1, and then it's really just kind of held that $1 mark really well, honestly. I think better than a lot of people expected it to. But what I think really happened is, you had this leverage blow up, and then you had, people who were forced sellers and people who just exited because they didn't want to be here anymore. But after all that capitulation, I think you're left with people that don't want to sell RUNE at anything around $1. So, we've really just been kind of seeing this cat and mouse game right now, where the price just doesn't really want to go lower. So I'm not one for much technical analysis. I much prefer fundamentals, and I focus on the fundamentals of an ecosystem and the token itself, and then the economics of it and the builders that are building it. So as many of you know, if you've watched any of my videos in the past, that's what I tend to focus on. And as someone who's building Leo decks and in Leo, I definitely focus on the GitHub and what people are pushing in terms of code, and how that developer activity is mounting. Um, so with TCY, with Thorchain, I think what's going to happen here, and obviously this is all speculation, not financial advice. I think what's happened is that people are in a wait and see mode right now with RUNE. So people don't want to sell, because the price is so deteriorated. I mean, a lot of buyers were up in the $3 to $8 range, let's say. So people don't want to sell at a major loss, and whoever did want to sell is already out. And people are waiting to see what happens with TCY because there's $200 million in previous debt that needs to be cleared out. So there's bad debt in the system, bad leverage, and people are waiting to see what happens with that leverage, how it gets paid back. So obviously, as many of us know, the proposal from Alux to pay all these people back is to release a new token called TCY, which gets a 10% claim on all future revenue of Thorchain. So that gives it some value. And then there's some buyback mechanisms in place, to give it long-term value as well. So some really interesting kind of financial engineering behind this, that is all designed at the end of the day to pay people back who were in the ThorFi mess involved in it. So what I think is going to happen is TCY is going to go live. People are still a little bit, I would say there's a lot of people that are just kind of on the fence about what they think is going to happen with TCY. So TCY goes live, hopefully in the next, kind of like 8 to 12 days is like the timeline I keep hearing. So something in the next week or so, TCY will go live. The people who are ThorFi holders, previous people that put Bitcoin into collateralized lending, for example, are going to get paid back. They're going to get paid back in the form of TCY. I think TCY is going to perform really well right out of the gate. The starting price is 10 cents. I'm kind of expecting and pretty confident that the price is going to be north of 30 cents, very close to launch day. So just because of all the mechanisms in place, and I think that people do have a focus on cash flow, and Thorchain is a very highly profitable machine when you look at it. It's making a ton of money in terms of daily revenue from swaps. So getting a 10% claim on that daily revenue is obviously a very attractive thing. So I think the launch of TCY is going to be very successful. I think people are going to say, well, shit, the ThorFi disaster happened. RUNE price got deteriorated. Either they sold or didn't want to sell, and now they're going to see that the protocol is kind of back on track to where it was before. And I think we kind of shoot right back to $3. So that's really where this kind of like $3 mark in my mind. That's where the ThorFi collapse really happened. So RUNE was at $7, and this is back at the end of December, and you can see that and if you looked at the rest of the market or look at like RUNE BTC, this initial drop was all from the market. So it wasn't RUNE that was dropping on its own because of ThorFi. it was because the rest of the market started going down. Once we kind of crossed this like $4 threshold, you see that we just kind of just dumped dramatically down to like 350. And then from there, this is the actual ThorFi collapse, is where we dropped from. See if I can zoom in here. The actual ThorFi collapse is where we kind of dropped from this like $3 range. And you see, we just absolutely, the RUNE price got absolutely demolished to 2 and then to $1. And that was the ThorFi collapse. So what I think is going to happen is that TCY is going to be successful. And when people realize that TCY is successful, they see that Thorchain and RUNE are now back to their path of being successful. And by the way, this whole time, Thorchain's just been churning out swaps very successfully and very profitably. So I think RUNE recovers back to $3 very quickly because people will say, well, now all the leverage is flushed out of the system. And by the way, now RUNE is deflationary. There's no more RUNE being printed for inflation for block rewards. And then I think people will also look at how successful TCY is in terms of its launch, and provide all these things kind of line up and are successful. I think RUNE kind of just shoots right back to $3 as people who are either sidelined and waiting to see what happens, or perhaps sold their RUNE and are waiting to buy back until they're confident that Thorchain is going to recover. I think we see it just shoot right back to $3. And obviously it will carry TCY up with it as well, because TCY is only tradable. We talked about this on the podcast yesterday, but TCY is only tradable in one place, and that's on Thorchain, and it's paired with RUNE. So all else being equal, if the RUNE price triples, the value of TCY in terms of US dollars will triple. Obviously, things are not always equal, and there's going to be people that trade that. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I think the success of TCY is not guaranteed, but I think it's highly likely. That's my personal opinion. Again, not financial advice. So I think TCY is going to be successful. I think people are going to get paid back from this ThorFi collapse. And I think that the confidence in RUNE is going to return, and it's going to return very quickly. So that's just my opinion. Like I said, take everything with a grain of salt. I'm not one for technical analysis, so I just don't do technical analysis. And I am just confident in the fundamentals of Thorchain. And again, that's what I tend to look at, is the development of something, the economics behind something, and the tokenomics behind it. So that's, as someone who's been a long time RUNE holder, and I, bag held RUNE from, this entire thing. So I've been buying RUNE at sub $1 or right around $1 kind of this whole time. Historically, buying RUNE at $1 has been very profitable for me, and I think for many others. So, if you believe in Thorchain not dying, I think buying at this price, not financial advice again, so I feel like you have to keep reiterating it, is a really good idea. It's a good idea for me, and that's what I'm doing. And all I can say is what I'm doing. So I'm keeping my eyes on the TCY launch. If you don't know, I'm building Leo, which you see the sign behind me is in Leo, but the Leo ecosystem, and we've got in Leo, which is a social media platform, and Leo Dex, which is an interface for Thorchain, Maya, and Chainflip. So we're building Leo Dex, and we're actually preparing for the TCY launch right now. So we're going to be adding a TCY dashboard where you'll be able to actually do your claim. So if you have any TCY to claim, and then you'll be able to do all the actions related to TCY. We're also going to have some cool charts about like yield and projected yield. Some really cool stuff that I think people will be excited about. So keep your eyes on Leo Dex too. Thanks for watching, and let's all hope for the best TCY launch imaginable. I'm pretty bullish on it.